It's very common that we update a state variable based on the current value of that state. And so let's now learn how to best do that. And in fact, we are updating state based on the current state all the time here. So here, for example, in setStep, we take the current step and then subtract 1. And here the same. So here we take the current is open state and toggle it basically. And so this is what I mean with updating state based on the current state. Now, the way we are doing it right now is working just fine, right? So our app works fine, but now let's imagine that after a few months, we come back to this app and then we want to change something. So let's say that we want this handle next function here to actually move forward twice. So let's say that we want to set the step state twice. So there's nothing stopping us from doing that. So we can do this once and duplicate it. So this is perfectly fine. We can call the same function twice. But what happens now? So what do you think is going to happen when I click next now? So in theory, it should take the step, which is currently 1, add 1, so 2, and then here it should do the same from 2 to 3, right? But again, watch what happens. So it only updated the state once. Now we will go into detail why exactly this happens, but for now what I need you to know is that we should not update state based on the current state like this. So the way that we have been doing it. Instead, what we should do is to pass in a callback function here. So instead of a value, we pass a function which will receive as the argument the current value of the state. So let's remove this here and let's create a function. And I will just create a simple arrow function here. And so as I was saying, this will receive as an input the current value of the state. Now there are multiple conventions on how to call this argument. So we could again call it step, but this might then be a bit confusing. We can call it the current step, for example, or just S. And so this is what I'm going to do now. So just an abbreviation. And so then here we can do S minus 1, just like before. And so this will now work the exact same way, right? So the view here was updated in the same way as before, but this is a little bit more correct. Because if we do this here, so again, receiving the current step as an input, which we just call S, but it could be called anything, right? And so then here we return that current step plus 1. And the same here. Plus 1. And so if we run this again, then it works. So then it is updating the state twice. So it started at 1, then therefore this callback here received the value of 1, and then 1 plus 1 was 2. And then here in the next state up, that updated value is already passed here into this callback. And so then we have 2 plus 1, which makes 3. Now here we actually do not want this, of course. So we just want to move forward by 1. But in order to be safe for future updates, it's a good idea to always use a callback like this when we want to update state based on the current value of that state. So let's do the same here. So again, here we are also doing the same. So we are also setting the isOpen state based on the current one. So let's just call it is and then toggle that. All right. And that works beautifully. Now, when we're not setting state based on the current state, then of course we can just pass in the value as normal. So just like we did here, for example. So that also happens sometimes. And so in that case, we need no callback. Then we just pass in the new state value as we do here and as we also had here previously. So again, in many situations, that would work just fine. So before we only had the S minus 1 here and nothing else, and so that worked as well. But in order to be safe for future updates or for working with coworkers, it's best to update the state in a more safe way like this. And so from now on, I will do this each time that we update the state based on the current value of the state.